Awesome, thank you. All right, we're going to begin here shortly. If you could turn off or silence your cell phone, I'd appreciate it. Council members, ensure your microphones are turned on. All right, today is Monday, May 15th, 2023. Today is a Committee of the Whole meeting for Barberton City Council. Before we jump into the Committee of the Whole meeting, we will go into individual committee meetings this evening. And first up is Street, Sidewalk, and Lighting with Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring the order of the Street, Sidewalk, and Lighting Committee. It is 6 o'clock. Members on my committee.
On it.
Normally I wouldn't need one, but I have a sore throat, so I'm struggling. The members on the committee, I'm chair, Mrs. Bailey, who is co-chair, is absent, and Mr. Griffin. I have council members as listed on my sheet, along with guests as noted. I have topic of discussion. I have one request for legislation. It is a letter from Michael Tiadecki, city engineer, requesting legislation to allow the mayor to enter into contract with the Ohio Department of Transportation for the improvement of Hopkinton Avenue from Hillsdale Avenue to A Street Northwest, Norton Avenue from 17th Street Northwest to Barber Road, and Snyder Avenue from 2nd Street Southwest to 5th Street Southeast. Emergency wording is requested. This is the final resolution. We had the first piece of legislation was Resolution 182, 2022, and it's City of Barberton and the State of Ohio agreed to cooperate with this project. This is the final piece of legislation where the City of Barberton commits to the State of Ohio. Is there any questions from my committee? Yes.
If I may, can I turn this off? I'm having a very hard time hearing.
Okay. Are your ears plugged? Because mine are too.
Thank you.
Oh, that is loud.
Oh, there you are.
Okay. Now, this is a 20/80, 20% after the project, that 20% from Hopkinton and Snyder Avenue, that's the grant, and 10% from Norton Avenue. So the total bill, or the total invoice, we pay that up, and then the state gives us back the 80 and 90%. So, do I have any questions from my committee? One person, you.
No.
Any questions? No.
No.
Do I have any questions from the body? Council? No. Anybody from the body? No. Do I have a motion to call for this?
So moved.
And I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have no pending legislation, and I can open it up to my committee for any miscellaneous discussions.
I don't have any.
None? From council, any discussions?
Ms. Angela?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Chair. The city did start on the work on the roads? Is that what I've been seeing?
Work on the roads.
Or
The
I did-
2023 resurfacing?
Correct. But I'm confused because they did do some new roads I did see.
Yes, yes. I don't know if they started on that as of yet. I know they did start on East Houston,
Correct.
seeing the big bulldozers down there and putting in all that. I became very good friends with one of the residents, and we were working on this project for a number of years. And when it finally came through, I was told, it's on the list, we're going to do it. And I did call her, and we talked, and she said, I won't hold my breath. I'll be dead before this happens. Unfortunately, she had hip replacement surgery. She had a blood clot, and she died in November. So she is not here to see something that we worked very hard with the administration for the last few years. So I see it, but I can't go down the street yet. We were going to sit on the front porch and watch the guys working. So I know they started on that. I'm not sure if they had started yet on the roads. Mr. Shreve, have they started on any of the resurfacing?
So I figured I would walk up to the podium today. So, I mean, we do have a lot of stuff going on, but no,
Yes.
the road resurfacing program has not started. Council, as you all know, approved it last week. We still have to set up a pre-con meeting with Perrin. Perrin is, they have Norton's contract. Norton has started. Norton is paving some roads already. So we're hopefully right behind them. You may have seen that 29th Street got done. 29th Street, so the very end of it is a portion of Norton. Norton actually paved a small portion up there that, so we got a couple of calls today with that going on. We have paved West Houston. West Houston was part of a water line project. It got paved. I know we shared some of those pictures today on Facebook. And then I'm sure you guys have seen the lights and the barrels and the cones out on Worcester Road West. That is the kickoff, the start of our Worcester Road West project, because we want to make sure that the sanitary sewers and the storm sewers are cleaned and functioning properly. So we've been out there. We've got a company, Fee Corp, has been in here cleaning and televising that to get that project underway. So I just thought I would come up and give a little bit of an update.
Good,
So,
great.
Does anybody have any other questions?
Thank you, Director. The courts that are included in that paving, will they be done fairly quickly, or is that something that's going to be pushed back until they're done with Norton, like you said there?
With Perrin?
Yeah, because didn't the award go to the basketball courts as well?
Okay, I see what you're
Pickle
saying. Pickleball.
Oh, yeah, I'm
So
sorry.
pickleball, I'm not real sure. That's, Don and Mike have been kind of working a little bit more with that, but I would assume when they're in town, putting the pavement down, so there's a lot more involved there, because in the end, they have to paint the court, they have to line the court, they're putting up nets, they're putting up some fencing. That's more than just putting down pavement, but my assumption would be that when they come in town to put the pavement down, they will do the pavement at the courts at the same time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Joyce.
On Tusk, up on the west side there, the street is labeled no parking by city ordinance. Is that part of these cameras, or are we doing something different there?
On Tusk.
West
Yes, it's not, it's West Tusk, but it's on the other side of the ball fields in Ward 5.
And you're asking, what are we doing there?
We have it labeled as no parking
Okay.
by the city of Barberton all the way up Tusk. And I've had people asking me what we're doing. And you don't know.
I am not aware. Yeah, so I don't know if that's something the street department is working on.
Okay, I'll check.
But I'm not aware. I wasn't aware that they posted anything up there for no parking.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, I didn't say, I'll find out and get back to you.
Yes?
Snyder Avenue
Mm-hmm.
and Van Buren Avenue. Are you going to do Van Buren, South Van Buren?
Yes.
The street that runs to Schaefer's and all those trucks?
So those are both, so Snyder is a ODOT AMS project, and Van Buren is one of our projects that should be kicking off this fall. So yeah, so that'll be reconstructed from Snyder to Russell, and then repaved from Russell to
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Shreve? From the audience, any questions? Lots of orange cones, so they'll be exciting. If there's nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mr. Griffin, I will second it. We adjourn at 6:11 PM. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Angela. Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services. Mrs. Bailey is not here, so her co-chair, Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services, meeting today, May 15th, 2023. Council members are present, myself as co-chair, Mrs. Nina Angeloff, and Erica Bailey is absent as chairwoman. Other council members are also noted, and Mrs. Taylor is absent also. We have no new request for legislation and no pending legislation. And I'll open this up for a miscellaneous discussion. There's nobody, committee,
I don't have any.
audience. All right, that was quick and easy. Seeing none, motion to adjourn, please.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will second that, and we are adjourned today at 6:12. That passed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Jaber. Next up is Planning, Annexation, and Codes with Mrs. Thompson. Mrs. Thompson is absent. Co-chair is Mrs. Angela.
Thank you. I want to bring together the Planning, Annexation, and Codes Committee meeting. It is 6:12 p.m. Members of this committee, chair is Mrs. Thompson, and she's absent. I'm co-chair, Mr. Jaber and Mr. Greer. I have council members marked on my sheet with guests. We have no request for legislation, and we have no pending legislation, and I can open up to any miscellaneous. Other than the Planning Commission has a meeting this Wednesday, open to the public, at 5:30. No questions? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I will second. And we are adjourned at 6:13 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Angela. We have a special city properties, parks, and recreation with Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. We got city properties, special parks, recreation. It's special meetings. We can only discuss what's on the requested legislation or legislation itself. All right, and we're starting at 6:14. Members present, myself as chair, Mr. Heidick, and Mrs. Fry. Also, members are noted and guests are noted. First requested legislation. A letter from Don Pash, Director, Barberton Parks and Recreation, requesting legislation to enter into contract with DWA Recreation in the amount of $129,810.84 to replace the play structure at College Park. Emergency already requested. Refer to finance. Any remarks on this? Or questions? Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Chair. Given that this is requesting information for College Park, and we have a second piece of agenda on here for College Park as well.
Correct.
Would it make sense to just change order a little bit up on your agenda and do that one last after we hear the remarks about College Park?
All right, so we'll skip that one, and we'll skip to letter B. This is about the sale of College Park. A letter from Thomas Heidick, Councilman at Large, requesting legislation to place the following on the ballot: sale of College Park. We had a Parks Commission meeting on last Thursday, and the Parks Commission did agree on the sale, not the sale of College Park, to keep College Park. But I just want to also include that the Safety Director, Mrs. Eisman, and also the Law Director, Mrs. Lisa Miller, are not okay with this. And seeing that Mrs. Eisman is in charge of the safety and safety forces with the police department, and I talked to Mr. Griffin this morning, and talked to other constituents and residents and business owners. I mean, they're okay with it and they're not okay with it. So at the end of the day, it's the constituents' decision on this, but we also got to respect Mrs. Miller and Mrs. Eisman's decision also. Because with Mrs. Eisman, she is technically in charge of the police department, and a couple of the police officers are, off the paper requesting that we not put the equipment back at College Park. So I will open this up for discussion. I would like to see Mr. Griffin's opinion on this, please. For the sale, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, what are we talking about?
About the sale.
Equipment or sale?
Sale.
Oh, okay.
Sale of College Park. Well, I think everyone knows my feeling. The playground equipment was burned down, and I always insisted that it go back to that park instead of being moved anyplace else. The residents in that area wants that park to stay there as a park, and it does have programs in the summertime that people do for that park. It's a big part of South Barberton. I've talked to a lot of people in the area, and I have no problem with it, and they want the park there. In fact, we have some people here talking, so I'm not for the sale of College Park.
Mr. Angeloff?
And I'm not for the sale for College Park. In fact, I'm not for the sale for any of the parks because I don't think procedure was done correctly on that. But College Park is an old park. I'm sure you played on it. My husband played on it. And it's been there a long time. And after going to the Parks Commission meeting, it kind of makes sense that they are, the Parks Commission, they are in tune with it could be dangerous, something could have happened, something could happen. So I was really, when Mr. Patterson and Mr. Harden said that the equipment, instead of being closer to Snyder Avenue, which maybe would entice, that they would move it back a little bit further and do parking in the front perhaps, and he had a whole plan of a small gazebo and that type thing. And moving it any other park is not even something that we should be talking about. That needs to, I feel personally that if you start looking at different parks that are dangerous, well, we can start listing them, different parks. So I think that that park, and I'm not sure, I'm just going to say how many of the children go down to Everly Webb Park, where they would go here because of the new equipment. So I'm not in favor of selling College Park whatsoever.
Anybody, council members? Mrs. Frye?
I'm not in favor of selling it either. And as Mrs. Angeloff alluded to, that was not presented in a proper manner. Nobody got to decide which parks we were going to sell or if we were going to sell any of the parks. And it's at the last hour. If you would want to put them on the ballot now, I mean, it would have to just be approved right away, and I'm not in favor of doing something like that without a lot of discussion.
Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Chair. This wouldn't be voted on right away. This would be, if this came out of committee, this would be voted on the third reading, not emergency. There would be literally 42 days to discuss and possibly change minds one way or the other. So the request does not require a vote next week. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
I think that it's more than 42 days that we need to allow citizens to have input. And if the Parks Board is not in agreement with selling parks, then we shouldn't be looking at selling parks out from underneath them. That's really not our job.
Anybody in the audience? Ms. Marie back there?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for
Sure, I don't
coming.
have to tell my name, everybody know who I am, but I'll say it. My name is Gwenny Marie, and I'm one of the young ladies that hold the events in College Park. Now, you want to talk about a safety issue because of Van Buren Homes. Van Buren Homes have their own community and their own area of play. We're trying to save the park. We're trying to keep the kids off the streets. If you take a park away from a kid, where do they go? To the streets. That is a public park. I hold events there. I bring anywhere from 200 to 300 kids on a Saturday afternoon to play in that park. Now, safety issue, then that means the city of Barberton needs to put lights at the corner of Snyder Avenue and Van Buren for the pedestrian crossing. Because how else can they come from Van Buren Homes to get to College Park? Yes, it's a busy road, I understand that, but then block off the front. And as far as the sale of the park, I'll stand there and up under the bulldozers before I let them do that. Because I grew up in that neighborhood. You know, there's nothing wrong with that park. Put it back to where it was. Let the kids come out and have fun. You know, if you take it away, where are they going? Breaking in your houses, running the streets, selling drugs. Let them go to the park. I'm just not, I'm upset with this. So we need to take it to charter. Let the community vote whether or not to sell that park or to get rid of it. And as far as moving the equipment to the back, and you're gonna park up in the front, now you're taking areas from the street. You talk about a safety hazard, because when people are pulling into the park, they gotta stop and wait for someone to pull into the park. There is an opening in the back off of College Street is where the cars parked. That we had no issues. We had no issues. The fire department was there. The police department was there. There are several members here that was there. More than 300 to 400 children would come to these events. I see them all the time. When are we gonna have an event? There's nothing for them to play with. So please consider, keeping College Park, keeping Eberly Webb Park. You announced her name, you gave her, her name for that park. She started that park, and now you want to take them away? So, okay, look me up. My name is Gwenny Marie, Friends and Family of College Park. Look it up. We have thousands of pictures. The fire department was there, the police department was there, Red Cross was there. So many of the members were there. They donated. We had a blast. So please don't take the park from the kids. That's just my concern. It's not about me. It's about your kids, your grandkids, your nieces and nephews. You want to keep them safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Bragg?
I wanted to mention that at the Parks meeting, Pete Worsler was there, and he had indicated that he has some CDBG money, and it could be used in that park to make some upgrades, like picnic tables, fencing, the parking area, and that type of thing, and it falls into the category of having the money used in that particular area. Right now, we're talking about whether or not to sell the park. I really don't think that it should be sold, and I do think that they should try to make some upgrades to make it nicer, because they do only have 2 parks in that particular area.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
You, at the Parks meeting too, I can't, I'm not going to quote Mr. Patterson verbatim, but he said it was so enlightening for him to drive through town and see kids in the park. That's what his whole goal is to get the parks back, and have children in the parks and play. And when he said that, it makes sense. He's trying his best as Parks Director to utilize all of the parks and putting in a pickleball and increasing this and doing the splash pads. And I think that College Park is very important to the neighborhood, as is other parks important to our neighborhoods. So I believe that should stay open. Thank you.
Ma'am?
My name is Mabel Cheatham, M-A-B-E-L, and I lived across the street from College Park for 7 years, and my daughter played there. I didn't have any problems with it. The kids played there, and it was quite fulfilling to see it. Parks are places for recreations that benefit the community. It enhances properties, and it's a place set aside for people to commune together, all the communities. It's a place you can go to release stress and be with your families and enjoy life. And I do not want to see that park sold. I live on George Street now, and from my house I can see part of College Park now. And it does benefit the family, and as Gwenny says, I have been there when these recreations are going on, and we do have a lot of people there. A lot of items were donated, and I would like to see the park stay there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cheatham.
Anyone else? Mr. Griffin?
Mr. Draper, the sale of the park, the vacant land, what is the purpose of it? For development? Who knows? It would be sold to a private developer for what? How much? What's the reason? You want to put houses there? So what's going to happen?
That's up to the
There's
plan.
plenty of vacant property in Barberton, South Barberton, that's not in the flood zone. Vacant lots that needs to be repurposed, sold, and could be, put a house there and stuff like that for people to purchase. We don't need that park sold for someone, because nobody's knocking the door down right now to buy property and develop out there. And that they got 2 houses on George Street. that they built without garages. I go to functions in Akron, ribbon cuttings and everything else. I met the builders that put those houses in on George Street. And I told them, they laughed at me because I told them, how come we didn't put garages in there? They laughed. See? And it should have been caught here. If you're going to build houses, you have to build them to standards where it'll attract somebody. Now the people want sheds there. Okay, now where are you going to put the shed at? You can't even have enough clearance hardly to drive back in your yard. So we need to consider other property and put a house there that's attractive, substantial. You know what I'm saying? That has some kind of value instead of just throwing something up. And one phrase that I'm sick of hearing. I'm sick of hearing somebody saying it's better than what you had. I don't like that. Driving a car is better than what I had. I used to walk. But the thing about it, you want to put something there that attracts people, give them a reason to move there, to invest there, to use the parks, to use other things, instead of, oh, it's better than what you had. I don't like that. No, I want no one to ever tell me that. Better than what I had. If that's all you got to say, don't say it to me. But,
Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Chair. I can't speak for this or against this, but I do want to point out, which I'm sure you know, that if this is called out, as well as the item A on your agenda for putting money towards the playground, it's two conflicting pieces of legislation, and one of which is requesting emergency wording and one reading. So if you do decide to call this out, it does conflict with the first one.
Mrs. Angelo?
Mr. Jaber, I'd like to direct my question to Mr. Greer.
Sure.
I don't understand the specials. Why did we have specials? To call it out of committee, or?
Correct. Parks last week
Because that's not an emergency, is it?
Parks last week had their scheduled committee meeting. There was a Parks Commission meeting in between last week and this week, and these were being entertained. Parks Commission was going to talk about it. This is just one of the three that were on the agenda. I called for a special to bring forward all of the topics that were on city properties and parks, and did not, I don't make the decision if the committee gets what they pick and choose. So this is just one that fell into that.
Because I'm looking at Rule 403, number 2, and the basis for an emergency must be submitted in writing to the clerk, and after 14 days have been passed, so I was kind of set back when we had these two as a special, because it was only 1 week. And the funny thing about it, the majority of us, I'm going to say all but maybe two, we didn't even know about this till Monday. So we didn't even have time to review it, and then we're reviewing it again. So I was surprised that we got specials, because I think there's a lot more that we need to discuss, and I agree that, some apart property, maybe it should be sold, maybe it shouldn't be sold, but by having this special, which really isn't an emergency, I'm probably wrong, I'm always wrong anyhow, but I don't see that this is an emergency, and I feel pressured in getting this done. And we had a very good Parks Commission meeting, and again, the second time, they voted not to sell that park, and they voted not to put the playground back there. So we're just saying exactly what we said last week, and unfortunately, we did not get any of this until Monday. So I don't, are we within the emergency part that we have to have a special?
I appreciate your input. The special was called last week, and I approved the special because of Parks Commission meeting midweek between this one and that. I brought forward the entire committee agenda. No rules were broken.
Mrs. Miller?
There is no emergency language in the sale of the property ordinances.
Sell the property, no.
Right, so to be clear, there's no emergency wording in that ordinance.
Correct.
Those are 3 ordinances, right? All right, so what other ordinances before the committee?
The park,
Sale of Harder Park and the sale of Conrad
Right,
Park.
there's no
playground
emergency wording in those
Talk about the
ordinances.
playground equipment.
All right, so that's a separate ordinance. Right, so that one may have emergency wording, and that was in the request for that ordinance.
Right.
That was submitted by Director Patterson. So that had emergency request in it, and he had it in the request. Director Patterson did,
And we put it on.
and we put it in there.
Yes.
The other 3 ordinances, the request came from Councilman Heidick. It did not have an emergency request in it. I just want to clear that up.
The emergency request is for the 30-day, not emergency to call it to council.
Right, but there was no emergency request in the sale ordinances.
Correct.
Correct.
Thank you. Miss Marie, back there, she said, she had the quote, she said, had the residents, constituents put on the charter. I mean, that's, and she's one of the head College Parks organizers. I mean, she gets involved. Do you agree with that, Mrs. Marie? Have the citizens vote for this?
Yes, sir.
And speaking to her,
I have one question.
yes, ma'am.
Why is it that the city of Barberton wants to sell so much of the properties? That's,
It wasn't the city, ma'am.
okay, well, I mean, if you want to sell the parks because the city may need the money, you own properties that's, say for instance in Copley, that's just growing up weeds. It's growing weeds and it's a lot of land. There's nothing on that land, so sell that.
To be clear, the council is not voting to sell the parks. Council would be voting to place that issue on the ballot for the citizens to vote. That's the first thing.
Yes.
The second thing is the property in Copley is in the watershed for the reservoir for drinking water. That's
Okay.
the property in Copley.
Okay, but it's growing grass and weeds and trees. There's no water. There's no water out there. I was just out there Saturday.
So, I mean, we got a lot of back and forth, and I've always understood one thing in business. You always go with what your lawyer says, and being Mrs. Miller is our lawyer, and for the city of Barberton, and she does not want it there. And Mrs. Marie's saying we should put this on the charter, so we can have the residents, constituents vote on this. So I'm gonna respect Mrs. Miller and Mrs. Marie, speaking with her multiple times. And this way we can have the residents vote for this. And that's our job, is have constituents to do their part and vote for this. So, can I get a motion for this?
I'll make the motion to call for it.
Mr. Heidick? All right, and myself will second that. And can I get a vote to put this on the charter?
Aye.
Aye?
it's not on the charter, you're putting it on the ballot.
I apologize.
No.
A vote to call for it.
All right, so it's 2-1. That passes. To put on the ballot. Save my notes. All right, we're gonna go ahead and go to the next one.
I just want to be clear. I did not render any legal opinion about the ordinances regarding the sale of the property. My issue and Mrs. Eisman's was about the placement of the play
Right,
equipment.
correct,
Okay.
correct.
Which, are we going to vote on that tonight,
Yeah,
or?
Yes.
I was confused about which one you were calling.
Right.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna go with C now. Letter from Mr. Thomas Heidick, Councilman at Large, requesting legislation to place the following on the sale. The ballot, sale of Harder Park.
Harder Park.
Yes, ma'am. Harder Park. Any questions?
Yes. Have we asked Parks what they want? I mean, we have a Parks Commission.
Yes.
And we're jumping ahead of them, and I'd like to know how Mr. Patterson and the Parks Commission feel about us putting this on the ballot?
They're more welcome to speak.
You know, as Tom Harnden, Chairman of the Parks Commission. Last week, we voted not to sell College Park, and we voted to recommend to City Council that discussions about Conrad and Harder be referred to the City Council, Parks, the Administration, and the Planning Commission to determine the best use for those two properties.
Correct.
Okay? So again, not to sell those properties, but to recommend that, a meeting be held between the city, the Administration, Council, Planning Commission, and Parks to determine the best use for those two properties.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy.
Okay.
I want to remind everybody also, there'll be 3 readings on this. After the 3 readings, council members will vote if it will go on the ballot. I mean, from listening to other council members, 99% it's not going to happen. But this way, it's opened up for residents, constituents, business owners will come in and talk about this. And hopefully by then, other directors will get together and work together to see what they want. But again, this is just for us to hear what the constituents and residents come in and talk about this.
I think there may also be some confusion, and Mrs. Miller can speak to this, but, if City Council votes to put any of these properties up for sale, only at that time do the citizens get the vote, and it requires a 2/3 vote by city charter to sell any city property, park property. So if you guys don't vote to put it up for sale, it doesn't have to go on the ballot, and it remains a park.
Correct. Again, it needs 66%. Yes, sir.
I just have a couple of questions. So was that a committee vote then that just happened? A Parks
Yes.
committee vote?
Yes, sir.
For one of the parks?
Yes, sir. Now we're on the second one, Harder Park.
Well, the only other thing I'd like to say is, we've been down this road many times the last quarter century. Might as well hang it up now. Citizens are not going to vote to get rid of the parks.
Correct.
Now, when we sold the Tuscarora Park after a couple of losses on those, and we got $1 million for it to sell it to the hospital, I think we passed it with like 71% of vote. After that, the citizens got together, because it used to be 50% plus 1 vote to sell parkland. They got together and got it on the ballot to 2/3 vote. So if you're going to get millions out of it, you might get the citizens to vote. But my view is you're just wasting everybody's time.
Correct. It's not also wasting time, but this way we can hear what other residents will come in. So this will get the word out. We had 2 residents in Ward 3 come in today, and they're both against it. So we'll see what happens to other residents
Well,
come
it's going to
in.
be 90% against it. If we're
Probably
gonna spend that money
99%.
to put it on.
99% probably.
Unless we can get $1 million.
Mrs. Fry?
I don't think that the city is doing it to get money if they do sell. They're selling to get out from under the maintenance that we have to do on these parks. We have 16 parks, and it's to the point where it's really hard to get them mowed and things of that nature. And the Parks Commission had already been discussing Harder Park and Conrad Park, which are parks that are not used very much at all, if at all. And even if they would be able to sell them, I don't know, what anyone would put on those pieces of property. But from the administration's standpoint and council's, I think that the sale of the parks is basically geared towards having less maintenance. We're not going to make a lot of money on any of the parks that we would sell. Some of them are in areas where you couldn't even you couldn't access utilities. And maybe the way they're shaped or whatever, it wouldn't be good for homes or things of that nature. But I don't think that council should be proposing what we sell. I think the Parks Commission should be proposing the parks that they feel should be sold. Because as Mr. Harnden explained to us, they went around and evaluated all of the parks. So I think their advice is what we should be using to determine what we're going to say that we would put on the ballot for sale. With that, I pass.
Thank you. Mr. Hyde?
Thank you, Chair. Is Patterson over there?
Yes.
Director Patterson and Chairman Harden, what amenities are at Harder Park currently?
Nothing.
How many parking spots are there currently?
Half dozen.
Okay. Has the commission or the director indicate any plans to develop Harder Park into putting amenities there?
No. No, what came up last week was that there's certain, there may be other uses for Harder Park. The mayor brought up the fact that it could be used as a retention pond to alleviate flooding in that area, which is why the Parks Commission, instead of making a recommendation to sell it, made the recommendation that the city, through the administration, city council, planning, and the Parks Department, get together to discuss those two parks and to determine their best use, whether that be sell it, lease part of it, create a retention pond, whatever.
Ms. Angela?
And I have to agree with Mr. Harden that we shouldn't be talking about selling. We should see if there is a better use for those parks, which Conrad Park is, it has a paper street and doesn't have and, nobody even knew last week that it was an acre. Nobody even knew that. But here, we're sitting here deciding if we should sell it and put it on the ballot when, how many people even know where Conrad Park is? I know that the Parks Commission, they took a tour and they went to these parks and everything. And I don't think this is something that needs to be done right now. I think that with the council members and the administration, especially the members on the Parks Commission, because of course one member didn't know anything about this, but the other two did. So there's a mixed communication right there. And I think that the administration and council and the Parks Commission, that they need to do their homework and see if that property can be used for something else. They would talk about the signage. There was one of those big electric signs, lease out part of that, make a retention on the other part on Harder. I think just by, doing a one line that you want to sell the property and no use for the property, what would you use it for? I think that there's no plan B. There's a plan A, sell it, but there's no plan B. There's no plan C. How much do you sell it for? What do you do with it? This and that. What is it zoned? That whole 9 yards. So I think that, we're jumping to conclude to go ahead and sell it, and then we'll let the administration or let the parks, let them figure out what they're going to do with it. But we said, go ahead and sell it, goes on the ballot. Now, I can't judge how many people are going to vote yes and how many people are going to vote no. That's something that nobody knows. And if it is, if the people see that these two parks are on, there are 3 parks now, then they might vote no, but they might vote yes. And I'd like to know what the next plan is if it's voted yes. I think we should be, I think we should be ahead of this. I don't think we should just say, yeah, we don't use it, we don't want this. And the Parks Commission made it very clear when we were there at the Parks Commission at the meeting that they wanted to talk to council, they want to talk to the administration, they want to see what they can do with this. You put any green space on a ballot to sell, and people don't like doing that, and the majority of the people don't even know where Harder Park is and Conrad Park. If you just moved in a couple years ago, you don't know where these parks are, but then you're staring at it on that ballot. So I think it needs more communication. That's my opinion. You talk about transparency, and this was not transparent at all. I mean, it was boom Monday morning, and we were hit with it, and it was already on here. So this kind of opens up the dialogue, and I think this is good, but I think that maybe we should have a public meeting regarding the use, what we can do with this park. And if it's sold, how much it's going to be for? I think we have to look at that longer term. That would make it easier if there was any other park. So that's my opinion and only my opinion. So I just think there's a lot more homework that needs to be done.
I appreciate your opinion, thank you. Again, we'll have 42 days before third reading to vote on this. This is just bring it up again and move on with it. And again, after what Ms. Marie said, as a constituent, she wanted to put this on a charter. I gotta respect it, on the ballot. Keep saying charter, on the ballot. And like I said, 99% of the time, it's not even gonna make it past the third emergency awarding. So far, we got 4 in here to say no. So, again, you got a motion for this?
I'll make that motion.
All right. Mr. Heidick first. I will second this and vote.
Aye.
Aye.
No.
No? All right. Motion carries. Vote good. All right, moving on to the next one. A letter from Thomas Heidick, Councilman at Large, requesting legislation to place the following on the ballot. Sale of Conrad Park. Again, same topic. Any questions or concerns? All right. Can I get a motion for this, please?
I'll make that motion.
I will second that. And get a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
No.
No. All right. Motion passed. So now we'll go back to A. A letter from Don Patterson, Director of Parks and Recreation, requested legislation to enter a contract with DWA Recreation in the amount of $129,810.84 to replace the play structure at College Park. Now, this is emergency awarding. Mr. Patterson, can you speak about this? Probably for the 20th time, I apologize.
I mean, the commission has, the last 3 meetings have voted on it. We've had council, we've had community members come in. Everyone wants the structure to go back in the park except for law and service. So that's where we're at. I think you kind of misunderstood when she was, well, I'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to go back. If it doesn't go back, I guess the money has to go back to insurance.
All right.
We have to wait till the vote.
Should we take off the College Park just so that he can make the purchase? Or, because, and this is almost like ridiculous, because we just voted, you just voted to sell College Park.
Not to
And
sell,
now we're
to put
talking
on the
about putting
ballot.
$130,000
Right.
into College Park.
Correct. Ms. Angela?
I don't know, hold this piece of legislation or just reject it totally, because you can't do 2 things. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. You can't sell the park and you can't put playground in there. So if it's going to go, you have to wait till we have our 3 readings to see if it passes council.
Correct.
If it doesn't pass council, then put it back on to put the playground back at College Street.
Correct.
Because we don't know.
Now, would the money still be okay after 3 readings?
That's what I'm asking, because
No.
wasn't that the...
Now, see, that's the problem.
Right.
Because we're being pushed, I think, to sell College Street, and we have this money sitting there.
Mrs. Murray?
Okay, so why can't the structure go back to the park? That's my question. Why can't the structure go back to the park? You have the money for it, so why can't it be replaced?
We can we vote on this tonight, Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Greer.
Mr. Greer, Mrs. Miller? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to answer that question. This is why I was mentioning earlier that this needed to probably go in a different order. The reason that they're questioning putting the money back into the park at this point is because there was a vote out of committee to go to the floor that would ultimately go to the voters to sell the park. Now, what happens if you approve this, the money goes to that park, voters chose to sell the park. Now all of that stuff is gone, completely wiped it out. I'm not speaking, I can't speak for or against this, I'm just shedding some light that that's why if we don't vote on this or hold this, we lose this money. There is no playground, there is no play equipment, and this may not even pass, and we're left with the park and no money.
There isn't a line item we can hold that money in?
Can't hold that money, Mrs. Miller?
We've been holding it for a few months, haven't we?
Oh, way longer than that.
Mm-hmm. So what's the deadline on, we can't take that money and put it into a parks fund or revolving fund or something
Right.
of that size,
So- We've received the money, it's been appropriated. It's
Okay.
here, we have it. So what the I'm just going to make up a number. Let's say the cost of the play equipment, I'm making up a number. Let's say the cost of the play equipment was $185,000. We received a check for $130,000. That gap is $50,000, the replacement value, right?
yeah.
The insurance company will repay us the gap, that $50,000, whatever that, these are not real numbers, I'm just making the numbers up. They'll pay us that gap, but we don't know what that is. Because we haven't paid it yet. We have to actually expend that money. So they've paid us an amount of money, and that has been appropriated. Jeremy, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So we have that money, it's here, we've appropriated it. We've already passed that ordinance. So that money is sitting here at the city, it's been appropriated. The part that is in jeopardy, and I keep getting the emails from our adjuster, is that gap.
Okay.
So you're saying we wouldn't get the gap if we don't move on
Well, they
this
just
and
keep
know what the
asking me
gap
what we're
is?
doing. Now, I've
Yeah.
explained to them the issue, and they understand it, and so they just kind of must have some sort of system where it just keeps, the claims agent just keeps asking me what we're doing, and I just keep telling them, so.
From what separate structures?
They've looked at 3 separate structures.
Well, I think they're gonna come in,
No,
Done.
it's been ordered. I can't order anything without a purchase order
okay, all right.
and Board of Control.
Yes, Joyce.
How do we go about taking this College Park out tonight? How do we not have this go through so we can appropriate that money? for
The money's
College
already
Park?
been appropriated.
Okay, but how do we get rid of this 6-week or 4-week delay on getting to order it? Because we know it's gonna be more expensive if we keep delaying. They voted to bring College Park out of